So picture this. You're standing in line at your local coffee shop, you get to the counter, you tap your card, and then you pause. Because for the first time, that oat milk latte isn't just a habit anymore. It's a decision. That tiny moment is where all those abstract macroeconomic charts stop being abstract and start hitting your actual bank account. That sticker shock is the perfect way into what we're talking about today. Because right now we're living in this really high pressure, kind of contradictory economic landscape. But before we get into it, if you want to stay up to date on what's happening in the Canadian real estate market, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. Food prices are exploding, real estate sales are collapsing, rents are shifting in strange ways, and yet the official data keeps telling us that everything is basically okay. It's confusing because the signals are completely mixed. So today's mission is simple. We're going to connect the dots. How does a 30% jump in coffee prices relate to a 35-year low in real estate sales? And why does earning what looks like a healthy salary suddenly not feel safe anymore? Let's start with the most immediate pain point. As of December 2025, coffee prices are up 30.8% year over year. That's a massive jump for something that's a daily staple. But this isn't just simple inflation. What we're seeing is a combination of issues. Poor growing seasons around the world have tightened supply, but the real kicker is the trade environment, specifically tariffs. We're feeling the downstream effect of these tariff battles, especially the US tariffs. And if you're wondering why tariffs announced in 2025 are hitting so hard in January 2026, it comes down to how long the supply chain is. Coffee has a long shelf life. It takes months for beans to move from harvest to roaster to retailer. The inventory being sold today was bought when tariff fears and supply shocks were at their peak, so prices are sticky on the way down. Even if tensions ease tomorrow, all that expensive inventory still has to clear the system first. And it's not just coffee. Beef is up almost 17% year over year, and restaurant prices are up 8.5%. So people change their behavior. You stop buying steaks, you stop going out for dinner, you cut back where you can. But here's the problem. The official inflation data says that everything is fine. Headline inflation is sitting around 2.4%. That feels completely disconnected from reality. If my grocery bill is up almost double digits, how on earth is inflation still only 2%? The data isn't broken, but it is skewed. It's what we call the base effect. Remember the temporary GST and HST holiday from December 2024 to February 2025? Prepared meals, kids' clothing, a bunch of everyday items were temporarily tax-free. That artificially lowered prices from last year. So when you compare December 2025 to December 2024, you're comparing a full price month to a discounted month. Apples to tax-free apples. Strip out that noise and core inflation is cooling to around 2.6%. But that's a cold comfort. Knowing that inflation is easing doesn't change the fact that your coffee still costs a fortune. It's the difference between economic theory and your checking account. And this is where it stops being just about groceries. Because when everyday costs rise this fast, they don't just change what you buy, they change what you qualify for. And that's where housing starts to crack. The data on the condo market is honestly shocking. Collapse is really the only word for it. In the Greater Toronto area, new condo sales have dropped 95% from their peak. In the entire GTA, with millions of people, just over 260 new condos sold in the last quarter of 2025. That's the lowest number since 1990. If buyers aren't buying, what are developers doing with all the projects they have planned? They're canceling them. 28 projects were canceled in the GTA area alone last year, accounting for about 7,200 units that were supposed to come to market. And the timeline here really matters. A project canceled today doesn't just mean no housing for today. Those 7,200 homes were supposed to be supplied for 2029. By canceling them now, we're almost guaranteeing a supply vacuum 3 to 5 years from now. We're sowing the seeds of the next housing crisis because the math isn't working today. We're sitting on record unsold inventory. Around 3,900 completed condo units are sitting empty today because buyers can't afford them at current rates. And when it comes to pre-sales, people are literally walking away from their deposits. Imagine buying a pre-sale condo 3 years ago for $800,000 and you put down a 10 to 15% deposit. Now the building is finished and you need a mortgage to close, but interest rates are much higher, so you now qualify for less. The condo's value might have fallen as well. The bank won't lend on the full amount, and suddenly you need to come up with the difference. Most people just don't have that lying around. Roughly 10% of pre-sale buyers are making that brutal decision to forfeit their deposit and walk away from $50,000 to $80,000 rather than complete on a purchase that would bankrupt them. This isn't speculation gone wrong. This is regular buyers getting crushed by the math they can't escape. If people aren't buying condos, they still need somewhere to live. Logically, you'd expect that to push rents through the roof. But rents in major cities are actually falling because we've hit an affordability ceiling. There's a hard limit to what people can physically pay. In Vancouver, rents are down 7.5% year over year, and Toronto is falling too. The national average rent has declined for 15 straight months and now sits at just over $2,000 a month. Landlords hit a wall, tenants can't pay more, and so they leave. Instead of rents exploding everywhere, we're seeing something more dangerous. People are moving, not because they want to, but because they have to. Vancouver rents falling while places like Edmonton are skyrocketing is a prime example. Edmonton rents are up about 17% over the last 3 years. High prices in Vancouver push people out, and they take the demand with them. The gap between renting in Vancouver and Edmonton used to be around $1,800. Now it's around $1,100. As that gap closes, the incentive to move weakens. But the damage to the affordability in those so-called affordable cities is already done. All of this points to a broader economic slowdown, and the GDP numbers back it up. The economy shrank by 0.3% in October of 2025. But the headline number hides the real issue. We're in a per capita recession. Individual wealth and standard living are declining, even if total outputs look relatively stable. Normally, in this kind of environment, you would expect central banks to start cutting rates. But the Bank of Canada just held rates at 2.25%. And the really scary part isn't what they just did, it's what the market thinks is coming next. Despite all of the recessionary signals, markets are pricing in the possibility of a rate hike later this year. Hiking rates into a recession is how you end up trapped. If the bank cuts rates to help housing, they risk reigniting inflation. If they hike rates to kill inflation, then they crush the housing market even further. And caught in the middle of that trap are everyday Canadian households. This squeeze isn't just hitting low-income earners anymore. Families earning $150,000 to $160,000 a year, historically a top-tier household income, are starting to feel it too. In 2026, the math has just fundamentally changed. It's not just groceries. It's the fixed costs that you can't budget your way out of. Income taxes, CPP, and EI take the first bite. Insurance costs are up, property taxes are rising as municipalities struggle, and then there's the other big one, which is mortgage renewals. Families who locked in at 1.5 or 2% back in 2021 are now going to be renewing into rates around 4% or higher. On a $600,000 mortgage, going from 2% to 4.5% adds roughly $800 to $900 a month. That's about $10,000 a year in after-tax income that just disappears to interest. Money that used to go to savings, kids' activities, or dinners out, gone. That's why it doesn't feel like people are mismanaging money. It feels like the rules changed underneath them because they did. And when the middle class starts to feel like an endangered species, watching political energy spent on anything other than the cost of living breeds cynicism. So what about housing policy? Are we actually fixing the root issue? North Vancouver is making it look like they're trying. As of December 2025, the city legalized 4 to 6 units on a standard single-family lot. The goal is missing middle housing, which sounds exactly right. But the catch is the floor space ratio, or FSR. A 4,000 square foot lot with an FSR of 0.85 allows about 3,400 square feet of buildable space. Divide that into 6 units and you're left with roughly 550 square feet per unit. Now, put yourself in the developer's shoes for this one. You still have to pay for land, demolition, permits, and construction, but now you're trying to sell 550 square foot micro units to families. The math doesn't work. So instead, developers will likely try to build 2 larger units they can actually sell. On paper, the zoning allows for affordability. In reality, the economics force homes in a higher price range. So when you zoom out and look at January 2026, the picture is pretty clear. We're being squeezed at the grocery store by tariffs, frozen out of housing by interest rates, pushed around by shifting rents, and even high earners are feeling the walls closing in. And what makes the squeeze so brutal is that there's no real easy lever to pull. The central bank can't cut rates without risking inflation. Governments can't fix housing supply overnight because construction takes years. We're in what feels like a painful transition period. For a decade, we had cheap money and stable trade. Now money is expensive and trade is volatile. The economy is recalibrating, and everyday regular people are acting as the shock absorbers. Before we wrap up, there's one real thing that people should be paying attention to, and it's the supply void for 2029 and 2030. We didn't just slow housing construction in 2025 and 2026. We've shut it off. But people are still forming households. Demand doesn't just stop because building does. So when 2029 rolls around and all those canceled projects we're supposed to deliver, the new listings column is going to be thin. By the time we react, it will take years to fix. It feels like we're always chasing the problem. If you want to understand how this landscape affects your specific situation, there's a Calendly link below and I'd be happy to go over it with you. It's obviously not a cheerful picture, but understanding the why behind the what at least makes it easier to navigate. Watch your budget, watch interest rates, and maybe for now, think twice about having that second coffee.